Hello world, I'm Prince the Culture Keeper, founder of the Culture Keeper Circle. Today I want to talk to you about the federal government's receipts, aka one of the most vital federal institutions, the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA. NARA is the federal agency responsible for maintaining and publishing the legally authentic and authoritative copies of acts of Congress, presidential directives, and federal regulations. NARA also transmits votes of the Electoral College to Congress. The National Archives hold 13 billion pages of records, photographs, maps, treaties, military files, and government documents. These archives document government actions, aka the receipts. For African-descendant, Indigenous, Latiné, Asian, Pacific Islander communities, NARA's 13 billion pages of receipts include evidence of land dispossession, forced migration, records of enslavement and emancipation, records of decisions of war, military service records, activism, surveillance, survival, and contribution. The National Archives preserves critical records for African-descendant communities. NARA holds the Freedmen's Bureau records, marriage licenses, labor contracts, school rosters, health reports, and legal filings from the era of emancipation. These documents are foundational for African American genealogy and historical research. NARA maintains slave manifests and coastal shipping records that tracked the forced movement of enslaved people between U.S. ports. These records map the infrastructure of the domestic slave trade. NARA keeps the military records for colored divisions of military branches, like enlistment papers, pension claims, and sworn affidavits from black soldiers who fought in the Civil War. NARA archives civil rights surveillance files from the FBI, records on Dr. Martin Luther King and the Black Panther Party, and other leaders and organizations who challenged state violence and demanded justice for Black Americans. These collections provide verified evidence of Black life, labor, leadership, and liberation. The National Archives safeguards essential records that shape the political and cultural continuity of Indigenous nations. NARA holds the Dawes Rolls and tribal enrollment records, documents used to assign land and determine federal recognition. These files continue to influence tribal citizenship and legal claims. They preserve Indian boarding school archives, student files, letters, and photographs from federal assimilation schools. Many families use these records to find missing relatives and reclaim stories lost through state separation. The agency protects ratified Indian treaties, binding agreements made between Indigenous nations and the U.S. government between 1789 and 1871. These treaties are legal instruments in ongoing land, water, and sovereignty claims. They maintain Bureau of Indian Affairs records, extensive documentation on land transfers, healthcare, education, and governance. These records demonstrate the struggle and scale of federal intervention in Native life. These archives support legal restitution, cultural revitalization, and community memory. The National Archives holds federal records that document the labor, migration, and displacement of Latiné communities across the Americas. NARA maintains Bracero program records, labor contracts, letters, and inspection reports from a government program that actually recruited Mexican workers, but exposed them to wage theft, unsafe conditions, and forced removals. These files expose federal complicity in labor exploitation. The contracts, complaints, and Immigration and Naturalization Files, or A-Files, contain deeply personal documentation for Latine families. The birthplaces, migration routes, interviews, legal decisions, and photos. These records help families prove residency, restore fragmented genealogies, challenge deportation orders, and apply for citizenship or other legal status. They also reveal how immigration law shaped who could enter, who was denied, and why. Border Patrol and INS enforcement files map the structure of immigration policing, raids, detentions, deportation, and surveillance operations. They allow community scholars and legal advocates to track state behavior, reveal systemic abuses, and support legal challenges to unjust enforcement. These files also show how U.S. policy shaped borderland culture, fear, and resilience. NARA also keeps documentation of U.S. actions in Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and throughout Central America. The agency maintains military operation records, economic development files, and declassified diplomatic cables that show U.S. involvement in the Caribbean and Latin America. The National Archives preserves records that document exclusion, incarceration, service, and resistance across Asia and the Pacific Islands. NARA maintains Chinese Exclusion Act case files, interrogation transcripts, family photographs, and affidavits from Chinese immigrants who challenged discriminatory entry bans between 1882 and 1943. NARA keeps Japanese American incarceration records, including military orders, loyalty forms, and redress applications from those who were imprisoned in World War II. NARA maintains Filipino veteran service files, proof of wartime military service under U.S. command, and evidence used in equity claims for long-denied veterans' benefits. NARA keeps Hawaiian annexation documents, including petitions and letters opposing the illegal throw of the Hawaiian Kingdom. These archives preserve the facts of U.S. policy and community resistance. They uphold the integrity of historical truth and support present-day claims for justice and recognition. Now you see why the National Archives and Records Administration's 13 billion pages are so important. The National Archives aren't just pieces of paper. They are the evidence of our past and proof of what happened, when, and to whom. The Culture Keepers Circle defends cultural memory, and NARA is one of the few institutions that still has the primary source receipts intact. But right now, it's under political and financial attack. We need to protect the archives because without them, we lose our ability to tell the truth, to prove our claims of injustice, learn from our past, and pass on the stories of lived people in our collective pursuit toward a more perfect union. That's why we're fighting to prevent the destruction, disappearance, or deaccessioning of any National Archives records in the current administration. Imagine how heart-wrenching it would be for you to lose your family's only traces of its history in the U.S. public record. Join us to fight for the permanent preservation of the National Archives records. Join the circle. Visit www.culturekeeperscircle.org. Please donate to us to protect NARA's 13 billion pages of records, photographs, maps, treaties, military files, and government documents, and more cultural heritage we stand to lose right now. Prince the Culture Keeper, over and out.